what's up? I'm Guy.
I'm John.
It's our YouTube channel. Subscribe to it and give this video a like.
Yep. Podcast below in the description.
Go to wineaccess.com/ham. Get 20% off your first order. The best wines. Well, did you get a new order?
Wineaccess.com/ham.
You did get a new order.
No, I just haven't used this bottle yet.
Oh, okay.
It's been in the corner.
All right. So, the Niners,
We
John.
found out they were sending me and they weren't sending to you.
They, I thought you got an extra order. They did not pay the price for Julio Jones, a second and a fourth. I'm okay with it. As you and I have discussed, we would have loved to go out to Niners OTAs on Tuesday and seen Julio Jones out there running around. We'll get to what they're counting on. But as you woke up on Sunday, or maybe you're already up, you saw the news that he's going to the Titans. Did you think the Niners missed an opportunity to be aggressive?
To be honest, I never really envisioned it happening. I wanted it to happen. I rooted for it to happen. But I remember talking with someone with the Niners last year when there was talk about Julio getting traded in season. Remember, it was really ugly.
Yeah.
And their coach was fired pretty early on. Could they blow it up? And they just thought that, you just can't on an older player, and they have done this before. You and I talked about it last week. Like, they feel pretty good about Trent Williams, but you can't keep doubling down on 3 or 4 Trent Williams. And that's kind of what Julio is. Again, you're talking to someone that would not have complained, but I understand the justification for the other teams, right? And then when you find out, to me, it would have been a big kick in the dick if he had ended up in Seattle or with the Rams. And I think Kyle mentioned that today at the Sonoma Raceway. And to me, once he's going to go to the AFC, whatever, right? And part of their pushback is we don't have first-round picks for the next 2 years. And I think we've seen teams, I think the Texans are a good example. Worst case scenario, things can go really bad when you get yourself in that predicament. And I don't think the hard part with the Niners is they easily could be a Julio Jones away. But coming off the season they had last year, I don't think you can stand up with a straight face and say that. I think you go, they should be a wild card team. They should be good. But to just be a player away when you just mortgage the future for a rookie quarterback, which means really you're thinking more big picture, I think it's easy to justify not pulling the trigger. And again, I'm someone, if they had done it, I would have applauded their aggressive nature. I got to the Steve Young part of the book where they traded to Tampa Bay, and Eddie is doing the deal with the owner. And the owner goes, I want players. Because as Steve Young said, the moment you walk in the locker room, you're like, all pro, all pro, all pro, all pro at every position, because free agency didn't exist. And Eddie came back with his push in the negotiation, was like, how about I just give you money?
Which it turned out the Bucs owner just wanted money, right?
And he loved money. They had just signed Testaverde. But it was like, if you could
do that. They
just
drafted Testaverde. Well, yeah, and signed him.
If you could do that, like, I would be like, yeah, Jed, give them $20 million, right? Then 100%. But that's not the way it works now.
Yeah. Yeah.
How sweet is that?
Remember, they tried to send Steve Young to the St. Louis Cardinals, and they were as bad in his organization. Steve's like, I'm not doing it. I'm not going. Right? That was part of that trade, right?
Also part of the trade.
Yeah. The Niners now, we've had 2 players that Kyle Shanahan is closely associated with. Well, we've had 3 players that Kyle Shanahan's been closely associated with, 2 of whom he's talked about, been on the record with Kirk Cousins, on the record after the fact saying, yes, we were going to go get Kirk. That's why we didn't really look at the Mahomes, Watson, Trubisky draft class. And then I guess Trent Williams, I would say, was closely associated with him, ended up on the Niners. Julio, he had coached and been on the record saying, when a player like Julio Jones is available, you go get him. But things have changed since then, right? The Niners' draft inventory has changed since then, or he's coaching a team that doesn't have first-rounders. Maybe that's the better way to put it. And Julio's gotten older. I do think he would have liked to have Julio Jones on his team. But it's all a sliding scale. At what cost? And how much does he really help me? And I do think he would have helped them, but I think ultimately the cost, a second and a fourth, would have been good with, but the story would have been the Niners just got really aggressive to go all in on Julio. Like, that's, if we alternate world, Julio's on the Niners, what's the headline? That's the headline. The Niners are all in right now with Julio Jones.
I think the best case scenario to run any business, to run any team, to run any household with kids in a marriage, there has to be some checks and balances. And every once in a while, I think Bill O'Brien served as an example. The last couple years, there stopped being checks and balances in Texans, and it got outrageous. And the reason checks and balances helps with coaches, they don't look at personnel stuff often like a personnel guy does because they're just living in the moment of week one. And there's no doubt Julio, and just even 2021, Julio helps. There is a bigger picture thought, and this is where I think like where Belichick truly does get it, right? It's what made him so unique is like he gets it. And I think the best coaches just can listen to other people in their organization that are just naturally going to be more cautious on that side. Because ultimately, like John Lynch or John Schneider or Brett Veach, like no one is against trading picks for sweet players because you immediately get credit that day, right? Damn, you just traded for Jamal Adams, or damn, you just traded for Jalen Ramsey, or damn, you just traded for Stephon Diggs. It's an immediate, the fan base is excited. It is 100% a win. Where it changes is the Texans serve as an example. When Laramie Tunsil, like they needed a tackle, they got Laramie Tunsil, then they started losing because, like you said, in baseball, trading for these guys, you know, the draft isn't as important just in general. The division matters a little bit more. Like in football, the difference of being the 17th drafting team and all of a sudden being the 3rd drafting team and not having that pick, also not having a 2nd round pick when you're drafting 36 different from pick 50 is huge, right? It borderline crippled the Texans franchise. They had more issues. I mean, their quarterback's in shambles, but I just mean last season and then going to the draft, they didn't have any draft picks. So you never want to be a negative Nancy. And I think just in general, right? Just whenever you're looking at, you know, buying a home or whatever, where the market is, you can't let too many thoughts come into your head. Like you can't go, oh, is the market going to get cold? Is it going to get hot? Like you do have to think of everything from both angles. I do think though, it's always healthy to just lay out the worst case scenario. What happens if we buy this house and I lose my job and I don't have any money? Right? What happens if we trade for Julio, then all of a sudden we win 6 games this year and it's just we're in no man's land? Like, can we flip him again? Or like, what if we can't trade Jimmy? Like, what if we're just kind of stuck with no picks? And then we have Trey Lance on a team that turns out, you know, it's a little older than we thought. We got some guys under contract. We got to turn over a lot of stuff.
You know, if he hadn't been hurt last year, one thing I was talking to our buddy Chris Peterman the other day, and he said that he had heard that Julio doesn't practice a ton, which is fine if he's just healthy, right? Is he not practicing to maintain health, or is he not practicing because there's always just a little bit of something going on? I don't know. It could be both, right? We've seen teams where just vets, they don't need it, they don't practice, no biggie. But his point was, even if it's that on a team, if Trey Lance all of a sudden becomes your quarterback week 6, like that's not ideal if he hasn't really practiced with Julio. So just all these, to your point, there's just all these little things. Even in a perfect situation, a seemingly perfect situation, things can go wrong. There are enough things here that feel imperfect that would have made it feel like it was riskier than a normal trade is, and they're all risk. Any investment of draft capital or anything you do is risky, right? Any transaction you make of this level when you're trading picks for a player is risky. But there were enough things here that you probably had to consider, okay, these aren't weird hypotheticals we're talking about here, right? What happens if Julio is out for 9 games? He just missed half a season. So it's not that crazy of a hypothetical.
See, the personnel guy in me, maybe Peterman's talking to the coaching side, because that's something that doesn't bother me at all. Practicing.
Well, but again, I would say, don't you agree there's a difference between, is he not practicing because he's a vet, he doesn't need to? That I'm with you. That wouldn't bother me.
That was a knock on DeAndre Hopkins. Why Bill O'Brien? Like, he didn't practice anymore.
But is he not practicing because of that, John, or is he not practicing because he just needs every week? He's just kind of nicked up. That to me, there's a difference between.
One part of it is like, okay, let's say it is Julio Jones wear and tear. He just needs, like Andy Reid gives vets Wednesdays off the majority of the season. Julio probably goes, well, me and Matt Ryan have thrown a million passes to each other. We don't need the reps. DeAndre might just be like, I hate Bill O'Brien's practices. Right?
And I don't need the reps.
Again, certain players, that's a hard balance. And that's just something I understand from the Niners perspective. Like, we don't even want to deal with it. We're not in a position right now to give guys practice time off with a young quarterback. Like, that is a variable that's very fair. They have to take into account. Hell, even Jimmy, like, we need to throw to guys. That's something that, listen, like that stuff I know this, like in fairness to Belichick, that really matters. I listened to a really good podcast that Chris Long's podcast he had with Julian Edelman. And Julian just laughed because Chris is like, my first year there, I guess his only year, they made you scrimmage on the bye week of the playoffs. He's like, Julian's like, yeah, we call it the blue and white game. It's a full-on game. He's like, a couple years before you got here,
Blue and white game.
He's like, guys were going down. He's like, this is outrageous. We were playing full-on tackle football. But, like, there is a standard, you know? And I think Julian ultimately, his point was like, that's just kind of fucking what we do. And you know what? It works. It sucks. And you're on the sideline like, this is insane. And Chris was like, half the field's frozen. We're practicing in Gillette State. This is nuts. But you know what Bill would say? It works. So you just go, this is his deal. I would imagine Tennessee won't make Julio practice if he doesn't want to practice.
Which is I think is reasonable.